Evening descends upon Hartford, Connecticut, where a structure once resonated with America's beloved humorist's laughter. A docent extinguishes illumination and poses an inquiry. Do you truly wish to learn the somber tale behind Mark Twain's residence? Like and subscribe for more mysterious mansion videos. This dwelling emerged from aspirations. Within these chambers, Samuel Clemens shared merriment with his offspring, composed literary masterpieces, and envisioned establishing permanent roots. These spaces witnessed decorated evergreens during holidays, gatherings featuring distinguished visitors, and animated tales beside crackling hearths. Subsequently arrived the initial catastrophe, a child's affliction from which recovery proved impossible. The subsequent blow involved financial obligations, unsuccessful ventures, and vanished prosperity. The third comprised a resolution that constricts one's breathing passage, abandoning the dwelling now permeated not with happiness, but mortality's essence. The Clemens property underwent conversion into rental quarters, subdivided for commercial purposes, transformed into inexpensive lodgings. The family's grand residence metamorphosed into an peculiar shadowy labyrinth, where occupants murmured regarding nocturnal footfalls and a young girl's silhouette upon staircases. Decades afterward, demolition threatened its existence merely to accommodate vehicle storage. Precisely then, final salvation materialized. How did this structure, birthplace of comedic literature, become phantasmal within its own narrative? Why did it, defying probability, escape permanent erasure? The guide's fingers approach the illumination control. Obscurity consumes the parlor of Clemens's Hartford mansion. 20 observers remain motionless. Beyond walls, vehicular traffic hums along Farmington Avenue. Within, quietude possesses antiquity surpassing the thoroughfare itself. Can architecture retain sorrow? The docent inquires. The question suspends itself atmospherically. Someone repositions uncomfortably. A mobile device screen illuminates momentarily before darkness reclaims it. The guide continues narration. Within this chamber, Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, recited stories nightly to 3 daughters. They positioned themselves beside that hearth. He generated their laughter and entertained the entire nation. The guide permits the visualization to resonate. However, during 1896, his eldest offspring, Susie, perished upstairs. She possessed 24 years. Meningitis claimed her. Her parents remained absent during that moment. Following that evening, laughter permanently evacuated this residence. Illumination returns abruptly. The guided experience resumes. Visitors proceed through the billiards chamber, past ornate woodwork and colored glass, ascending the magnificent stairway. They capture photographic images. They examine informational markers. They depart. Yet one individual lingers extensively. Maya, 28 years old, specializes in architectural video documentation. Camera equipment slung across one shoulder, journal clasped in hand. She arrived in Hartford seeking content material. A celebrated author's elaborate residence, Victorian extravagance, compelling visuals, conventional subject matter. The guide's account struck unexpectedly deep resonance. Maya experienced her own father's death 2 years previously. Her family liquidated his property within months, financially unsustainable to maintain, emotionally unbearable to revisit. She had suppressed contemplation of that dwelling for weeks until this moment. She stands solitary in the entrance hall, gazing upward toward carved wooden staircases. Late afternoon sunlight penetrates stained glass windows, projecting crimson and azure patterns across flooring. Oral tradition maintains a coffin descended these stairs during 1896, Susie's remains departing permanently. Her father conducted lectures throughout England, desperately attempting to satisfy crushing financial obligations. Her mother, Olivia, accompanied him. Their youngest daughter, Jean, remained elsewhere. Only Clara, the middle offspring, returned home temporarily. Susie expired within her childhood sleeping chamber, feverish and delirious, calling for absent parents. The residence could not preserve her. Celebrity status provided no salvation. Remaining wealth, however minimal, proved insufficient for rescue. Maya experiences tightening sensations within her chest. She traverses the dining chamber. The extended table displays period china, as though the Clemens family might momentarily arrive for supper, yet they never returned to establish residence authentically. Following Susie's death, the family returned to Hartford briefly solely for packing belongings. Subsequently, they departed permanently. The mansion underwent rental. Strangers relocated inside. Chambers once containing America's most distinguished household became anonymous apartments, office spaces, storage areas. By the 1920s, inexpensive room rental was available without awareness of whose laughter previously filled corridors. Maya consults her timepiece. The museum closes within 60 minutes. Time permits one additional walkthrough. She ascends the rear staircase, narrower and steeper than the grand primary stairway. These constituted servants' passages. Oral accounts indicate 6 or 7 staff members resided and labored in this house during Clemens' years. Cooks, housemaids, a coachman. Their identities are predominantly lost. At the summit, she locates Susie's bedroom. The entrance remains open. The chamber appears small, surprisingly plain compared to ornate public spaces below. A solitary bed, a writing desk, floral wallpaper faded presently but carefully restored. Maya positions herself in the doorway. This location witnessed the conclusion. The dwelling's dream, childhood security, the conviction that success and affection could shield one from worldly realities. She captures a photograph, then stores her device. Outside, November wind rattles window frames. The house settles, producing creaking sounds. Somewhere below, final visitors are departing. Maya contemplates. I arrive seeking architectural narrative, yet this concerns not merely bricks and timber. This addresses what transpires when dreams collapse, when dwellings become monuments to everything lost. She turns to exit, but pauses. Upon the small desk rests a reproduction of Susie's correspondence. Maya leans closer for examination. The penmanship appears careful, hopeful. A young woman documenting her future. She never obtained one. Maya exits Susie's chamber and descends the main staircase slowly, trailing her hand along carved railings. Every detail within this house underwent selection. Every hue, every timber curve, every colored glass pane. Someone desired all this, planned it, believed in it. She wonders, what did Mark Twain perceive when first standing upon this empty hillside? Hartford, 1873. Farmington Avenue consists of mud and wheel ruts. The hill overlooks the city, yet nothing exists here presently, merely wind, grass, and distant factory and church bell sounds below. Samuel Clemens stands with his wife Olivia and architect Edward Tuckerman Potter. Clemens possesses 37 years, fame, wealth, and hunger to construct something permanent. He desires a house filled with humor, light, and children. Potter sketches concepts on a pad. Clemens continually interrupts with his own visions. The billiards chamber should occupy the top floor with expansive windows. The library must connect to the dining chamber so guests can converse through supper. The porch should wrap around the structure like a steamboat deck. Olivia maintains different priorities: safety, warmth, a stable home where their 3 daughters can mature far from hotel and rental room noise. The cost is substantial. The initial budget approximates $45,000. By construction's completion, the total climbs closer to $70,000. In 1874 money, a fortune. Yet Clemens feels self-assured. His books sell. His lectures fill halls. Money appears to flow inward as rapidly as he can expend it. The architect nods, adjusts his sketches, and takes notes. Within weeks, full plans are drawn. The house rises slowly. First comes the foundation, stone and brick sunk deeply into Hartford clay. Subsequently, the walls, red brick with black and orange patterns woven into the facade. The style appears hybrid, Gothic touches, Victorian drama, a hint of steamboat whimsy. Potter reportedly terms it modern Gothic, yet it fits no clean label. What everyone observes is that it resembles no other house in Hartford. Workers haul lumber and glass up the hill. Masons lay brick in intricate patterns. Carpenters shape banisters and door frames. The house takes form floor by floor, chamber by chamber. Clemens visits the site frequently. He paces through raw, echoing spaces, imagining where furniture will stand, where his daughters will chase one another. He converses with workers and cracks jokes. Some of them likely possess no awareness they are constructing a home for Mark Twain. To them, he is simply another wealthy man with oversized plans. The interior work requires months. Italian craftsmen carve the woodwork. Artists stencil ceilings in jewel tones. Stained glass windows are ordered from Louis Comfort Tiffany. The drawing room walls receive embossed leather and painted wood. The library gets floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Clemens insists on the latest technology, running water in several rooms, central heating, gas lighting throughout. Later, a telephone when they become available. This house must be modern and comfortable, proof that America can build something as refined as any home in Europe. Olivia selects wallpapers and fabrics. She decides where beds and sofas will be positioned. She considers morning light in the nursery and evening fires in the drawing room. The work stretches over years. Understanding how and why this house was built means understanding the young success who ordered it. Clemens is writing about America, its greed, its humor, its contradictions. And here on this Hartford hillside, he is building his own little America, a place where ambition and comfort can coexist, where a steamboat pilot's son can live like Eastern gentry. By 1874, the house is finished sufficiently to move in. Furniture arrives. Rugs unroll across polished floors, books fill shelves, fires burn in every hearth. The Clemens family walks through the front door for the first time as residents. 3 daughters. Susie, the eldest, is 2 years old. Clara is an infant. Langdon, their son, died 2 years earlier at 19 months. The grief remains close. This house is meant to be a new beginning, a place where no more children are lost. Olivia stands in the front hall and looks upward at the staircase, the stained glass, the painted ceilings. Clemens places his arm around her. "We did it," he says. She nods. They believe this house will hold them, keep them safe, become the fixed center of their lives. Maya, standing in that same front hall more than a century later, knows what they did not. The house will hold them for 17 years, and then it will release them. Maya steps into the library and stops. The chamber feels alive in ways others do not. Books climb from floor to ceiling. On most evenings, a fire would have burned in that fireplace. The chairs sit close together as if the family has just stepped out momentarily and might return any second. She imagines them here. Samuel Clemens reading aloud, shifting his voice for each character. 3 daughters curled on cushions, eyes wide. Olivia in her chair, listening, smiling. For 17 years, this house was exactly what they wanted it to be. The family settles in fully by late 1874. Susie is 2, Clara is a baby. John will be born here in 1880. The girls grow up racing through these rooms, sliding down banisters, hiding in closets during games that echo through the halls. Clemens works upstairs in the billiard room. He writes at a small desk near the window, looking out over the Hartford skyline. The room reportedly becomes his favorite place in the house. He paces while he thinks. He lines up a shot and plays billiards between paragraphs. He reads drafts aloud to feel the rhythm in his own voice. Here he writes The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, then The Prince and the Pauper. Then Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The books that will shape American literature take form inside this crowded Victorian mansion on a hill. Downstairs, the house hums with daily life. Breakfast in the dining room, lessons for the girls in the schoolroom. Olivia managing staff, appointments, and household budgets. The cook preparing meals. Maids scrubbing, polishing, mending, the coachman tending horses in the stable out back. It takes serious effort to keep a house like this running. 6 or 7 staff members work here full-time. Groceries, coal, gas, repairs, the bills never stop, but the money keeps arriving. Clemens lectures. His books sell. New investments promise even larger returns. The family builds rituals. Each evening they gather in the library for readings. Clemens performs more than he reads. He turns the lines into theater. Every character gets a different voice, a gesture, a way of moving. The girls plead for one more chapter. He usually gives in. Christmas transforms the house. A huge tree rises in the front hall, reaching toward the stained glass skylight. Presents pile beneath the branches. Carols ring around the piano. Guests arrive from New York, Boston, even Europe. The rooms overflow with voices and laughter. Clemens reportedly loves hosting. Writers, editors, politicians, actors, anyone interesting is welcome at his table. Dinners stretch late into the night. Conversations jump from literature to politics to the latest machines and inventions. Clemens holds court, telling stories until the table roars. The girls sometimes watch from the stairs in their nightgowns, meant to be asleep, but drawn by the noise and light below. Susie grows into a thoughtful, serious child. She writes poems and keeps a journal. She studies her father carefully, noticing when he looks tired or worried beneath the jokes. Clara is more social and musical. She practices piano, sings, and thrives on the constant parade of visitors. Jean, the youngest, is restless and bold. She charges through the house, climbs trees in the yard, and fires off endless questions. Olivia tries to shape them into proper young ladies. Piano lessons, French lessons, manners. Clemens pushes the other way. He wants them curious, fearless, unafraid to speak up. The house absorbs all of it. The order and the mess, the formal dinners and the midnight games, the quiet hours of writing and the noisy crowds of friends. Meyer opens her notebook and writes, "This house was not just shelter. It was their belief made solid, the idea that life could be controlled, shaped, made safe through money, planning, and care." She looks around the library again. Every book on these shelves was chosen, every lamp placed on purpose, every rug, every chair, every painting on the wall. Someone obsessed over this room, wanted it to feel perfect. But perfection has a price, and money, as Maya knows from the guide's earlier comments, was already starting to slip out of their hands. She closes her notebook and walks toward the dining room. The long table is set for a meal that will never be served. Silver glints in the afternoon light. Crystal catches the sun, throwing sharp sparks across the cloth. Maya counts the place settings. 12, enough for the family and a circle of guests. She wonders how many dinners played out here, how many conversations rose and fell over these plates. How many nights Clemens sat at the head of this table making everyone laugh while upstairs on his desk, letters about debt waited to be opened. The house was full of laughter, but under the jokes and music, something was already starting to crack. Maya runs her hand along the polished dining table and thinks about maintenance. How much did it cost to keep wood like this gleaming? To heat every room? To pay 6 staff members month after month, year after year? She walks toward Clemens' study on the first floor. This smaller room, tucked away from the grand public spaces, tells a different story than the library or drawing room. The desk here is plain. The chair is worn. This is where business happened, where envelopes were opened, where bills piled up, where the numbers refused to behave. Hartford, early 1880s. Mark Twain is at the peak of his fame. His books sell in massive numbers. His lectures fill halls across America and Europe. Newspaper interviews, magazine profiles. Everyone wants a quote, a joke, a moment with him. But fame and wealth are not the same thing. The mansion costs roughly $35,000 annually to maintain. Staff wages, coal for heating, gas for lighting, repairs, property taxes, food for a household that constantly entertains. The expenses march in week after week without a break. Clemens earns well, but he spends more. He lives like a man who believes the river of money will never run dry, and he invests constantly, boldly, often badly. He pours money into a new typesetting machine invented by James Page. The device promises to revolutionize printing. Clemens is sure it will make him millions. He funds Page's work year after year, watching his investment grow from thousands to tens of thousands, then to more than $200,000. The machine never works properly. He starts his own publishing company, Charles L. Webster and Company. At first, it looks brilliant. The company publishes Ulysses S. Grant's memoirs, which sell in huge numbers. Clemens makes real money. He decides he has found another road to lasting wealth. But running a publishing house demands capital, focus, and hard business sense. Clemens has bursts of attention when a project excites him. The business skill is weaker. The capital begins to drain away. At dinner parties, he is dazzling, sharp, funny, holding the whole table. Guests leave talking about his stories, his timing, his kindness. In his study late at night, he is pale and tight-jawed. He opens letters from his publisher, from Page, from Banks. He adds and reads figures. No matter how he shifts them, the totals move in the wrong direction. Olivia feels the strain in another way. The house is her responsibility. She manages staff, plans menus, keeps the social calendar full. The entertaining rarely stops. Important guests, Clemens reminds her, are good for business, good for book sales, good for connections. But she is exhausted. The girls are growing. They need schools, music lessons, proper clothes, trips. Susie is sensitive and often ill. John has seizures no doctor can explain or cure. Clara needs care too, though she is often lost between her more dramatic sisters. Olivia keeps the household looking effortless. On the surface, everything shines. Dinner appears on time. The silver is bright. The fires are lit before anyone feels a chill. In private, she tells Clemens they need to cut costs. Fewer trips, fewer large dinners, less risk in investments. He nods. He agrees. He promises to be more cautious. Then another perfect opportunity appears, another device that simply must succeed, another lecture tour that will surely fix everything, Another business venture that cannot miss. The staff notice small signs. Conversations that stop the moment someone enters the room. Clemens pacing in his study instead of sitting at his desk. Olivia's tight smile when the morning mail arrives. One maid reportedly tells another, "They live like royalty, but something is wrong." The girls feel it too, Susie especially. By 1889, she is 17, old enough to see when her father is distant, when her mother's face hardens after a visitor leaves. She writes in her journal about the tension that hangs in the house. Yet the performance continues. The house still glows at night. The parties still unfold. To neighbors and visitors, the Clemens family is still the most exciting, most successful household on Farmington Avenue. Maya finds a reproduction of one of Clemens's letters to Olivia on display in the study. She leans in to read. He is explaining why a new investment will work, why this next lecture tour will repair the damage, why she should not worry. The date is 1891. Maya already knows the rest of the timeline. The publishing company will collapse. The typesetting machine will fail. The debts will become crushing. And within 5 years, Clemens will have to leave this house for good, circling the globe on a desperate lecture tour just to pay back what he owes. But before that financial disaster hits, something worse will break them. She looks toward the staircase. Susie's bedroom is up there waiting. The house is about to learn what grief feels like. Maya climbs the stairs slowly. She has been avoiding this part of the tour. She chose the bright rooms first. The library where stories were read, the dining room where guests roared with laughter, the study where Clemens tried to hold his world together while the money slipped away. But now, there is nowhere else to go. She has to face the room where the story breaks. Susie's bedroom sits at the end of the second-floor hallway. The door stands open. Late afternoon light angles through the window and catches dust motes drifting in the air. Maya steps inside. The space is smaller than she imagined. A single bed with a white coverlet. A writing desk by the window. Floral wallpaper in faded pink and green. A short bookshelf with leather-bound volumes. A chair with a dress draped over the back, carefully posed by museum staff to suggest someone just stepped away. But Susie Clemens never stepped away. She died here. August 1896. The family is scattered. Clemens and Olivia are in England on a lecture tour, a last attempt to pay back crushing debts. Clara is with them. John is staying with family friends somewhere else in America. Only Susie has come back to Hartford. She is 24. That summer, she returns to the house and stays with the family's former housekeeper. She wants to be home. This place still holds a meaning no rented flat can touch. Safety, childhood, better days. Then she falls ill. It happens quickly. Fever, headache, confusion. Meningitis, though the doctors do not understand that at first. The housekeeper sends telegrams, urgent messages. "Come home, Susie is very sick." But the Atlantic is wide. Telegraph lines carry words, not bodies. Clemens and Olivia scramble to book passage, but ships need days to cross. They pray, they wait. They hope the next telegram will say better. In Hartford, Susie's fever climbs. She becomes delirious. She calls for her parents. She cannot understand why they are not at her bedside. The housekeeper sits with her hour after hour. Doctors come and go. Nothing they try makes a difference. The bedroom turns into a sick room. Medicine bottles cluster on the nightstand. Damp cloths lie ready for her forehead. The curtains are drawn against light that stabs at her eyes. Her writing desk remains in the corner, covered with her papers. Half-finished poems, letters she started but never sent. A journal where she wrote about what she wanted from the years ahead. She dreamed of becoming a singer, an opera performer. She had talent. She had plans. She stood at the edge of her adult life, ready to step onto the stage. Instead, she dies in her childhood bedroom on August 18, 1896. She is not truly alone, but her parents are still far away. The housekeeper and a few servants are with her. The telegram that reaches Clemens and Olivia at sea is short and final. Susie died today. Clemens reportedly breaks completely. Olivia collapses. Clara is shattered. At the next port, they turn the ship around and race back toward America. But they are too late for the funeral. Too late for anything except grief. When the family finally returns to Farmington Avenue, the house that once overflowed with life now smells of death and wilting flowers. Bouquets from the funeral still crowd the rooms. The air feels heavy still. Wrong. Clemens drifts through his own home like a visitor. He walks to Susie's room and stops in the doorway. He cannot step inside. Olivia tries once, then never again. The bedroom is shut. The door stays closed. The house itself feels cursed now. Every corner holds a memory of Susie as a child, running down the stairs, laughing in the library, playing the piano in the drawing room. But she is not a child anymore. She is gone. And the house that was supposed to protect her did nothing. Within days, Clemens and Olivia leave Hartford. They cannot stay in these rooms. Every wall presses on them. Every hallway whispers what they lost. They never live in this house again. Not as a family. Not in any real sense. The mansion on Farmington Avenue, built as a promise of safety and permanence, has become a monument to failure. The money is gone. The daughter is gone. The belief that you can build something strong enough to keep tragedy out is gone with her. Maya stands in Susie's room staring at the empty bed. She thinks about her own father's house, how quickly they sold it, how no one wanted to walk through those rooms after he died, how a building can turn from home into prison in a single moment of loss. Downstairs, the museum day is ending. The guide's voice floats up faintly from below, wrapping up the last tour. Doors open and close. Feet shuffle toward the exit. Maya takes one final look at the writing desk, at the books on the shelf, at the window where Susie must have stared out over Hartford and imagined a life she never got to live. Then Maya steps into the hall and pulls the door softly closed behind her. The first act is over. The dream has collapsed. What waits on the other side of the staircase is darker. Maya descends the stairs and finds herself back in the front hall where the tour began hours ago. The house is empty now, except for a single staff member getting ready to lock up. The silence feels different than it did this morning. Heavier, more final. She wonders what this silence sounded like in 1896, after the Clemens family left Hartford, late 1896. The house on Farmington Avenue stands with its windows dark. Inside, furniture sits under sheets. Grates are cold. No fires burn in the hearths. The staff has been dismissed. The family is gone. Clemens and Olivia cannot bear to return. Every room reminds them of Susie. Every hallway holds an echo of her voice. The house they built to protect their family has become the place where their daughter died. But they still own it. They still pay taxes on it. And they still owe money. Massive debts from the failed publishing company, from the worthless typesetting machine, from years of spending like the income would never end. Clemens is 60, broke, grief-stricken, famous, but financially ruined. The solution is brutal. He goes back on the road. Lecture tours across America, then Europe, then around the world. City after city, hotel after hotel. Night after night, he stands on stage, making crowds laugh while his own heart feels hollow. Olivia travels with him. Clara goes too. Jean stays behind with relatives. Her seizures make long journeys dangerous. The family becomes a traveling unit. They rent apartments in London, Vienna, New York. They stay nowhere for long. They own a mansion in Hartford but live out of trunks like people with no home at all. Lecture money comes in slowly, one performance at a time. Clemens pays his creditors bit by bit, determined to clear every debt. His honor demands it. His pride demands it. It takes years. Meanwhile, the house sits still. Then someone suggests renting it. The property is too valuable to stand empty. The mortgage must be covered. Taxes are due whether anyone lives there or not. If the Clemens family will not come back, another family can. Clemens agrees reluctantly. Olivia never wants to see Hartford again, so the choice falls to him alone. The first tenants arrive in 1897. A business family, respectable, quiet. They sign a lease and begin sending monthly rent. The mansion becomes someone else's address. These new residents walk across the same floors where Susie played as a child. They sleep in bedrooms where the Clemens daughters once dreamed about their futures. They eat dinner in the room where Mark Twain used to hold court at the head of the table. But they are strangers. They have no history with this place. The famous writer is a selling point, not a wound. The landlord mentions his name but says nothing about the dead daughter, the failed devices, the family pulled apart by grief and debt. The rooms lose their story. One family moves out, another moves in. The house is kept in decent repair, but no one loves it the way the first owners did. It is an asset now, not a refuge. Clemens continues his exile. He writes, he performs, he mails payments. But he never writes about the Hartford house. That chapter is closed in his mind, too raw to touch. Olivia's health begins to fail. The endless travel, the grief, the slide from wealth into worry. It wears her down. Her heart weakens. Some days she can hardly walk. Clara stays close to her. Joan's seizures grow worse. The family that was supposed to be sheltered by that grand house on the hill is scattered, sick, barely holding together. In 1903, Clemens finally pays off his debts. Every creditor, every dollar. His honor is officially restored. Newspapers praise his honesty and stubbornness, but the victory feels thin. He is 70. His wife is failing. His daughters are struggling. And he still owns a house in Hartford that he will never again cross the threshold of. In 1904, Olivia dies in Italy. Not in Hartford, not in the house she helped design and furnish, in a rented villa, far from the city where she once tried to build a permanent life. Clemens is shattered again, deeper than before. He returns to America but steers clear of Hartford. Instead, he builds a new house in Connecticut, smaller and simpler. He names it Stormfield and tries, in his own way, to start from scratch. The Hartford mansion stays rented. Seasons turn, paint fades, wood darkens. The carved details survive, but something at the core feels missing. Maya checks her phone. The museum is officially closed now. The staff member walks over, still kind even at the end of his shift. "We're locking up," he says, "but you can come back anytime." She nods, thanks him, and steps out into the November cold. Behind her, the mansion's windows briefly glow and then go black as the last interior lights click off one by one. The house that Mark Twain built goes dark again, and what comes next, Maya knows, is worse than abandonment. It is the slow transformation into something almost unrecognizable. Maya stands on the sidewalk outside the mansion, pulling her coat tighter against the wind. From here, the house looks different. Taller, more severe, Gothic, almost theatrical. The kind of building that collects stories, whether anyone wants it to or not. She thinks about everyone who lived here after the Clemens family left. Strangers sleeping in Susie's room. Children running down the same stairs where a coffin was once carried. New families building fresh memories inside rooms still lined with old grief. Did they feel it? Did they know? Hartford, early 1900s. The mansion changes hands again and again. One tenant leaves, another moves in. The house becomes a revolving door of temporary lives. A businessman and his family rent the second floor for 2 years. His children play in the same nursery where the Clemens daughters once chased each other. But these children are different. They do not know the history. To them, it is just a big, odd house with strange angles and too many stairs. The businessman's wife reportedly tells a friend she dislikes the drawing room. Something about it feels wrong to her, too watchful. She goes in only when she must. Downstairs, another family rents the first floor rooms. A widow and her adult son. They live quietly, rarely entertaining. The son works as a clerk downtown. The mother stays home, cooking in the kitchen that once fed crowded dinner parties and midnight guests. At night, she hears footsteps overhead in the corridors. Soft, light steps like a child's bare feet. She mentions it to her son. He shrugs. Old houses creak. Old houses settle. That is all. But the sounds return night after night, always in the same hallway, same soft tread. The widow finally asks the landlord about previous tenants. He gives her the surface story. A famous writer lived here once, Mark Twain. "You have heard of him, of course," she pushes gently. "Did something happen here?" He hesitates, weighing how much to say. Then, "His daughter died upstairs long ago, but that is in the past." The widow stops asking questions, but she does not stop hearing the footsteps. Word spreads slowly through Hartford. People begin to say that the house where Mark Twain lived is haunted. Neighbors pass stories over back fences and at corner shops. Each retelling adds a new detail, a new twist that might be true or might be invention. A child's laughter echoing in empty rooms. A figure on the staircase that vanishes when you look twice. Doors that close by themselves. A cold patch in the hallway outside Susie's old bedroom. Servants whisper in the kitchen. One maid refuses to go upstairs alone after dark. Another leaves her job suddenly without a clear reason. The tales swell with each new voice. Mark Twain's house becomes Mark Twain's haunted house. The dead daughter becomes a full ghost legend. Real grief is turned into something people tell for a shiver and a smile. Local children dare each other to touch the front gate at night. Teenagers stand on the sidewalk after dark, staring up at the windows, inventing stories about the shapes they think they see. The house built as a proud symbol of success and modern comfort drifts into being Hartford's favorite Gothic story. Reality, though, is simpler and sadder. The house is not haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by memory, by the weight of what happened here, by the gap between what was promised and what life actually delivered. Tenants keep arriving and leaving. Most stay a year or two, then move on. The house is expensive to heat. The layout is awkward for ordinary families. The rooms are too large, too formal, built for a style of entertaining that no one does anymore. By 1917, Mark Twain himself is gone. He died in 1910, never having come back to Hartford, never again facing the rooms he once loved. John died in 1909, drowning in a bathtub during a seizure. Only Clara survives, and she wants nothing to do with the Hartford mansion. She has her own life now, her own home. To her, this house is just an asset, a line on paper, a weight. She sells it. The new owners do not care about preservation or sentiment. They care about profit. The house is large. The address is desirable. Hartford is growing, adding factories, offices, streetcars. They see an opportunity. Maya pulls out her phone and checks her notes from the museum tour. The guide mentioned this face quickly, almost apologizing as she spoke. Even now, more than 100 years later, it seems people are embarrassed to say what the house went through. The house that Mark Twain built. The house where major works of American literature were written. The house that held grief, abandonment, and ghost stories. That same house is about to be carved up. Maya saves her notes and starts walking toward her hotel. Tomorrow she will come back with her camera. She will film the house as it stands now, restored and cared for. But tonight she needs to sit with what happened in between. How does a mansion become a tenement? How does a dream turn into just another address where people pay low rent and try to make it through the month? The answer she is starting to see is painfully simple. One decision at a time, one compromise at a time, one slice taken off after another until almost nothing of the original life remains except the shell. Maya returns the next morning with her camera, but she does not hit record right away. She sits in her car across the street, staring at the mansion and trying to picture a different version of it. Smaller windows nailed into big openings. Cheap doors where carved wood once stood. Thin walls slicing straight through grand rooms. Beauty hidden behind drywall. History smothered under linoleum. That is what happened here for decades. Hartford, 1918. The new owners bring in contractors. The instructions are blunt. Maximize rental income. Turn one mansion into many units. Make every square foot pay its share. The work begins. Carpenters walk through the house, studying the original layout. The drawing room is far too large for a single rental. They run a wall down the center, cutting it in half. One space becomes 2 apartments. The elaborate ceiling remains, stenciled and painted, but now it belongs to 2 different households who may never learn each other's names. The billiard room where Mark Twain once wrote becomes 3 small offices. New walls rise. The big windows are chopped up with partitions. Desks replace the billiard table. Clerks and bookkeepers sit where Huckleberry Finn was drafted, tapping out reports and stacking ledgers. The grand staircase survives, but its purpose changes. It becomes a common hallway. Tenants from different apartments pass each other without speaking, their hands brushing the carved banister that is now just something to grip on the way up to cheap rooms. The library loses its books. Shelves are torn out. The space is carved into 2 cramped flats, each barely large enough for a bed and a small table. A stenographer rents one side. A factory worker lives on the other. They share a thin wall and can hear each other's arguments, coughs, and dreams through it. The kitchen is carved up too. Several hot plates, several ice boxes. Tenants share the same original space but cook separately, watching the clock, trying not to collide during the morning rush. From the street, the house still looks grand. Brick facade, Gothic windows, wraparound porch. But inside it becomes a maze. Narrow passages, abrupt angles, doors that open straight into other doors, rooms that feel wrong because they were never meant to exist in that shape. The rent is low. That is what counts now. Hartford is growing. Workers need places to live. The mansion provides shelter, but without dignity, without memory, without care for what it used to be. A single mother, a stenographer named Dorothy, rents a tiny unit on the 2nd floor in 1923. 1 room, a shared bathroom at the end of the hallway. $50 a month. She works downtown 6 days a week. She comes home exhausted, makes dinner on a hot plate, and sits at her small table typing extra freelance work for a few more dollars. At night, she feels watched, not by ghosts, but by the room itself. The space is too fine for what it has been turned into. She can see bits of the original wallpaper peeking out underneath newer, cheaper layers. The window glass is old and wavy. The floorboards are wide and solid, nothing like the thin wood in newer buildings. Someone built this room to matter, to last. Now it holds one bed, one table, one hot plate, and a life squeezed into a space designed for something bigger. Dorothy mentions the feeling to her neighbor, an older man who works for an insurance company. He nods. "You can tell this place used to be something," he says. "It is like living in a wedding dress somebody cut up for dishcloths." The image lodges in her mind and will not leave. Paint flakes off in the hallways. Parts of the porch begin to sag. Outside, Hartford moves on. Horses give way to cars. Factories stretch higher. New office blocks rise downtown. The mansion shifts from impressive to simply old. By the 1930s, the Great Depression makes everything worse. Rents sink. Maintenance stops. Tenants churn even faster. Some pay late. Some never pay at all. The landlords stop trying to keep up. The roof leaks. Brown water stains bloom on ceilings. Plaster cracks and falls. The heating system wheezes. In winter, tenants keep their coats on indoors and sleep under extra blankets. The house is dying slowly. Not from fire or collapse, but from 1,000 tiny neglects. Every corner cut, every repair delayed, every year of treating it as mere property instead of architecture. Dorothy moves out in 1935. She finds a newer apartment downtown, smaller but cleaner, built as apartments from the start, honest about what it is. She never tells anyone she once lived in Mark Twain's house. She does not know. The landlord never bothered to mention it, and even if he had, what would it change? The building she knew was not Mark Twain's mansion. It was just another address where poor people tried not to freeze. Maya finally lifts her camera. She films the drawing room as it stands today, restored and glowing. She moves through the library, the billiard room, the grand staircase. But in her mind, she can still see the walls that once cut these spaces in half, the flimsy partitions, the cheap paint, the slow erasing of every choice the Clemens family made. She wonders, at what point does a house stop being a home and become just a container for survival? And once that happens, can it ever truly come back? Maya lowers her camera and walks to the window. Outside, Farmington Avenue is busy with afternoon traffic. Cars slide past in steady lines. Pedestrians cross with coffee cups and phones in hand. Hartford has moved on from the 1930s, from the Depression, from the long stretch when this house was just cheap apartments and crumbling offices. But the house almost did not make it this far. She turns back to the room, trying to picture it empty, windows boarded, wallpaper peeling, city notice on the door, condemned, scheduled for demolition. That nearly became its ending. Hartford, 1955. The mansion is about 75 years old and looks every single year of it. The carved-up apartments are barely habitable. The old heating system fails more often than it works. The roof leaks in a dozen places. Plaster drops from ceilings in pale chunks. The front porch sags and feels unsafe. The current owner is exhausted by it, done with repair bills, tenant complaints, and furnace calls at midnight. The building has become more burden than asset. Then a developer makes an offer, not for the house, for the land. The proposal is blunt. Tear down the worn-out mansion. Level the lot. Replace it with something useful. A parking lot at first, maybe a modern commercial block later. Hartford needs places for cars. Hartford needs new office space. Hartford, they argue, does not need a decaying Victorian shell tied to a writer most people barely think about anymore. The paperwork is drawn up. Permits are filed. Demolition is penciled in for early 1956. The house that survived Susie's death, Samuel Clemens's departure, decades of neglect and subdivision, that house is about to vanish completely. But then someone actually reads a newspaper. Her name is Eleanor Brownell. She is 63 years old, a librarian, a lifelong Hartford resident. She has watched this city change street by street, seen grand buildings fall and bland ones rise in their place. She reads the Hartford Courant every morning with her coffee. Most days it is city council arguments, crime reports, society notes, Stories that ask for attention, not action. On a cold November morning in 1955, her eyes snag on a small notice buried on page 7. Demolition proposed for Clemens property on Farmington Avenue. Eleanor freezes. She reads the line again. The Clemens property. Mark Twain's house. The house where he wrote Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. The house she walked past as a girl when it was still proud and people still talked about the famous family who had lived there. Scheduled for demolition. She sets her coffee down and stares at the newsprint until the words blur. Her hands start to shake. This cannot happen. This must not happen. That house is Hartford's memory, America's memory. You do not bulldoze the place where Mark Twain lived and worked. You do not trade it away for painted parking lines. But she is just a librarian. What can one person do? She begins with the people she knows. She calls friends, other librarians, teachers, people from her church group, anyone she thinks might feel the same shock. Her message is simple and urgent. They are going to tear down Mark Twain's house. We have to try to stop it. Most people are stunned. That old place on Farmington? I had no idea Twain lived there. That is exactly the problem, Eleanor says. No one remembers, but that does not mean it does not matter. She organizes a committee. They call it the Mark Twain Memorial. At first, there are 6 of them. 3 librarians, 2 teachers, 1 retired journalist. They gather in Eleanor's living room, surrounded by books and stacks of clippings, and start to plan. First task, attention. They phone newspapers. They contact radio stations. They send letters to editors. Their core line is sharp. Hartford is about to destroy its most important literary landmark. Do we care about our own story or not? The reaction is mixed. Some people agree at once. Save the house. Protect our heritage. Others shrug. It is just an old building. The city needs progress, not sentiment. The developer pushes back hard. The house, he insists, is beyond saving. Repairs would cost a fortune. It makes more sense to start fresh than to pour money into a wreck. Eleanor and her small committee argue the opposite. The bones are strong. The real damage is in plaster and paint. With serious funding and careful work, the building could be restored, but money is the cruel part. The committee almost has none. Donations trickle in like a slow leak. $10 from one supporter, $20 from another. A local school runs a bake sale and proudly sends $43 in an envelope. It is nowhere near enough. The developer sets a firm deadline. If the committee cannot raise real money and present a believable preservation plan by March of 1956, the demolition will move ahead. No more delays. Late at night, Eleanor sits at her kitchen table, pencil in hand, doing rough calculations on a yellow pad. They need thousands of dollars. They have only hundreds. The gap feels like a canyon. She thinks about quitting. Maybe the house is meant to be torn down. Maybe clinging to the past is childish. Maybe Hartford truly does need parking spaces more than it needs one old Victorian shell. Then she thinks about Mark Twain, about Susie's empty room, about all the families who lived inside these walls, loved them, lost them, gave up on them. Someone has to care. Someone has to say no. Someone has to remember out loud. She picks up her pen again and starts writing letters to foundations, to wealthy families with Hartford roots, to anyone whose name she has ever seen on the side of a library wing or museum plaque. One of those letters will land on the right desk and change everything for this house. But she does not know that yet. Maya sits in the restored library reading about Eleanor's campaign on a museum placard, the glass reflecting her own face over the old black and white photos. She thinks, one person, one tiny newspaper notice, one stubborn choice to care, sometimes that is all it takes to save a building. Almost. Maya stops in front of a black and white photograph on the museum wall. Eleanor Brownell stands in front of the mansion in 1956. She looks small in the frame, gray-haired, wearing a dark coat and sensible shoes. Behind her, the house is in rough shape, peeling paint, broken shutters, several windows boarded over. But Eleanor is smiling, because somehow, against the odds, she has just won the first battle. Hartford, spring of 1956. The demolition deadline is only days away. Eleanor's committee has raised some money, but not nearly enough. They have newspaper editorials, public support, petitions with hundreds of signatures spread across kitchen tables and library desks. What they do not have is the one thing that counts with the bank and the developer, a concrete financial plan that shows how the building can be saved. Then a letter arrives at Eleanor's house. The envelope is thick, creamy paper with a New York return address, from a foundation she had written 2 weeks earlier and almost forgotten. She opens it in her kitchen, still wearing her coat from the walk home, her fingers cold from the Hartford air. Inside is a pledge, a serious donation. Not enough to restore the mansion, but enough to buy time, enough for a down payment, enough to prove to the developer that the committee is not just sentimental but solvent. Eleanor drops into a kitchen chair. The letter explains that the foundation funds historic preservation. Mark Twain is a major American writer. His Hartford home should not be lost. They are prepared to help. Eleanor starts dialing numbers, committee members one after another. Emergency meeting tonight. By midnight, they have a rough plan mapped out on Eleanor's dining table. Step 1, purchase the property. Step 2, stop the demolition permit. Step 3, launch a larger campaign to fund actual restoration. One step at a time. The developer is not pleased, but money is money. He accepts their offer. The house is officially saved. Newspaper headlines celebrate. Mark Twain house preserved. Eleanor gives radio interviews. The committee poses for photos. For a brief, bright moment, it feels like the story has reached its happy ending. It has not. June of 1956. Eleanor and her committee finally walked through the front door with architects and contractors at their side. They knew the inside would be rough. They expected leaks, cracked plaster, bad wiring. Nothing prepares them for what they actually see. The carved woodwork is gouged and broken, entire sections ripped out by past owners. Many stained glass panels are cracked or missing altogether. Elaborate ceilings sag, stained brown and black from years of water intrusion. The heating system is not just old, it is dead. The plumbing is rusted and unsafe. The electrical wiring snakes through rooms in ways that ignore every modern code. Walls slapped up to make apartments block original sightlines. Floors feel spongy in places and need reinforcement. The roof must be replaced, not patched. There are cracks in the foundation itself. An architect walks through the wreckage, then turns to Eleanor. "This is not restoration," he says quietly. "This is resurrection." The cost estimate arrives weeks later. Full restoration will require hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps more. The numbers land on the committee table like a weight. The foundation grant was enough to secure the deed and halt the wrecking crew. But bringing the house back to life, that is another universe of money. The committee gathers again. The mood has shifted. The earlier excitement has drained away, replaced by a hard, tired silence. They have saved the building from bulldozers, yet they cannot open it to the public. Not safely. Not with ceilings ready to fall and wiring that could spark a fire. Right now, the house exists in limbo, too important to destroy, too broken to use. One member suggests selling it on, letting another buyer take the risk. "At least it will not be a parking lot," he says. Eleanor shakes her head. "We did not fight this hard just to hand it off and hope." "Then what do we do?" someone asks. Eleanor has no answer ready. The bank sets a new set of deadlines: mortgage payments, insurance, basic costs of ownership. If the committee cannot meet those obligations, foreclosure looms. They launch another campaign, this one fueled more by grim determination than excitement. Letters to donors, public talks, small events in school auditoriums and church basements. Donations arrive, but in slow drips. $5 in an envelope, 10 in another. A wealthy Hartford family sends a check for $1,000. It feels huge, but the gap is still massive. By autumn, the committee is worn down. Eleanor looks thinner in photographs from those months, her shoulders slightly hunched. She has poured her time, her savings, and years of energy into this fight. The numbers still do not add up. One evening, she stands alone in the mansion's dining room. The long table is gone. The walls are scarred from old partitions. The ceiling has open holes. Water damage has warped and buckled the floorboards. She whispers into the empty space. "We saved you. I just do not know if we can keep you." Outside, the sun slides behind the Hartford skyline. Light drains from the windows. The house sinks back into shadow. Eleanor locks the front door and walks to her car. In the morning, she has another meeting with the bank about money they do not have and deadlines they cannot meet. She drives home past new office blocks, low concrete parking lots, and glowing neon signs spelling out progress. Behind her, the mansion sits on its small rise, empty, saved, but not safe. Rescued, but not yet restored. Maya finishes reading the museum placard that covers this stretch of time. The curators call it the Dark Years. From 1956 to 1963, 7 long years of barely hanging on, and yet somehow the house did not fall. Maya feels the tug of the unanswered question. She needs to know who or what finally tipped the balance. Maya walks through the restored mansion with new eyes. Every perfect detail she sees now, the polished wood, the bright stenciled ceilings, the glowing stained glass, was once broken, dusty, forgotten. Someone had to care enough to fix all of it, piece by piece, year after year. That work took decades. Hartford, early 1960s. Eleanor's committee is still fighting. They have not given up, but they have not won either. Most days, the house stands locked and silent, waiting. Money arrives in small sums. Local bake sales, school drives, modest checks from people who loved Mark Twain's books, a few larger gifts from foundations that care about American literature. It is never enough for a full restoration, but it is just enough to keep the lights on and the dream alive. So the committee starts small, one room at a time. Volunteers show up on weekends. Retired teachers, history students from Trinity College, local craftsmen who donate their skills. They wear old clothes, bring their own tools, and step into the dust. First, they undo the worst damage. Thin walls that sliced grand rooms into cramped units are pulled down carefully, plank by plank. Drywall and cheap lumber are carried out. As they strip things away, the original architecture appears, like something being excavated from under sand. One volunteer traces the outline of the original drawing room, the old proportions, the hidden ceiling details under layers of paint. "It is still here," he says softly. "We can bring it back." They begin to strip paint, layer after layer. They test small patches, trying not to damage what lies beneath. Slowly, the Tiffany-designed ceiling stencils come back to life. Deep red, warm gold, dark green, patterns that no one has seen clearly in roughly half a century. Another team focuses on the woodwork. Carved banisters, door frames, built-in bookcases. Some pieces are too far gone and must be recreated from scratch. A local woodworker studies old photographs and surviving scraps, copying the patterns as closely as he can. Engineers stabilize the structure. Beams are reinforced. Cracks in the foundation are repaired. The roof is replaced section by section, following the original lines as closely as modern materials allow. Progress is slow. Funding arrives in bursts and then dries up. Some months, nothing moves at all because there is no money for supplies. The house sits halfway saved. Then a new grant is approved, or a major donor steps forward, or a corporation writes a check after a long meeting. Work starts again. Maya films the library, and a museum guide steps over to her. "You know they found the original Tiffany glass in the basement," he says, "just sitting there, taken out decades ago and stored. No one bothered to throw it away. It was like the house was hiding parts of itself until someone came looking." The restoration pushes through the 1960s and into the 1970s. Archivists search for every photograph they can find from the Clemens years. Every detail matters. What color were the walls? Where did the furniture stand? Which light fixtures were original and which were later replacements? Some answers appear in archives, letters from Olivia describing fabrics and paint, old magazine spreads showing the rooms at their peak, receipts for carpets, wallpaper, and furniture. Other answers are simply gone. In those cases, curators make their best, careful guesses based on period style and what is known about the Clemens family's taste. In 1974, exactly 100 years after the family first moved in, the house opens partially to the public. It is not fully restored. It is not finished. But it is safe enough to welcome visitors and honest enough to show. The first tour groups walk through rooms that are mid-process. Some spaces shine with fresh restoration. Others remain raw, with exposed plaster and scaffolding. The guides do not pretend everything is perfect. They explain what has been done and what still needs work. They tell the full story. The joyful years, the grief, the slow decay, and the long, stubborn effort to save the house. Visitors respond. They leave donations in boxes by the door. They sign up to volunteer. They tell their friends and bring them back. There is no single triumphant moment, no big ribbon cutting with brass bands, just slow, steady care, a kind of stubborn love. Maya watches a small work crew through a doorway. Even now, in the year 2024, restoration continues. A conservator cleans a stained glass panel with tiny, careful motions. A carpenter sands and repairs trim in a third-floor room. The house is never truly finished. It cannot be. Too much was lost. Too much was changed. But what remains is now protected, remembered, honored. She thinks about the volunteers from the 1960s, many of them gone now. Others very old. They gave years of their lives to this place, and most visitors today will never know their names. Eleanor Brownell died in 1982. She lived long enough to see the house open, to watch visitors climb the staircase she fought to save. She saw her impossible idea become real. She did not live to see every room restored. That work is still happening. Maya films the entrance hall one last time. The carved staircase, the stained glass, the painted ceiling. What moves her most is not the beauty itself, but the cost of bringing that beauty back. The years, the money, the belief that something broken can still be made whole. Not perfectly. Never perfectly, but whole enough. Maya spends her third day at the mansion filming behind-the-scenes material with the museum staff. A preservation specialist named Robert guides her into spaces visitors never see. Storage rooms packed with labeled boxes, workshop tables covered in tools and fragile fragments. Finally, the attic. Most people never come up here, Robert says as they climb the narrow stairs. But this is where the real stories hide sometimes. The attic is low and dusty. Light slips in through small dormer windows. Rough wooden beams stretch overhead. Along the walls, boxes sit stacked in uneven rows, each marked by decade. Robert is checking the structure after recent storms, scanning for fresh water damage and soft spots. Maya follows with her camera, filming exposed rafters, old insulation, and the layered history of the roof from below. People think restoration is just about making things pretty, Robert says. It is really about figuring out what happened. You learn to read the building like a book. He kneels near one corner where several floorboards look different from the rest. See here? These boards were replaced in the 1920s, probably. Different wood, different nails. The house keeps its own record if you know how to look. He presses one board. It shifts slightly under his hand. Loose. This should be secured, he mutters, jotting a note. Maya sets her camera on a nearby box and helps him lift the board. Underneath, in the shadowed gap between the joists, something dull catches the light. A small notebook. Water damaged. Leather cover gone almost black from age and moisture. Robert lifts it out carefully. The pages cling together. The spine is nearly gone. This should not be here, he says quietly. The tone in his voice has changed. They carry it down to the conservation lab. Robert pulls on gloves, now handling the notebook like it might crumble if he breathes too hard. Using a thin metal tool, he eases the pages apart millimeter by millimeter. Inside, the handwriting is faint but still readable. Pencil, not ink. A woman's script, small and controlled. Maya leans closer. The first dated entry is from 1922. The writer gives only initials, E.M. She is a tenant. She rents a small third-floor room for $12 a month. The entries are brief. Notes about long days at work, about coming home exhausted, about winters so cold she sleeps in a coat and summers where the heat traps itself under the roof, about neighbors she hears through thin walls but never really meets. One entry stops Maya cold. March 8th, 1923. Mrs. Patterson says a famous writer lived here once, but I do not believe her. This house is too sad and broken for anyone famous. It feels like a place people forgot. I feel forgotten here too. Sometimes I think the house knows. We are both just waiting. Months later, another entry. September 14th, 1923. Leaving tomorrow. Found cheaper rooms downtown. I will not miss this place. Too big and too empty and too full of ghosts at the same time. But I feel bad leaving it, like I am abandoning something that cannot take care of itself anymore. The final entry reads, I hope someone remembers this house someday. Not because of the famous writer, because of all of us who lived here when nobody cared. We existed here too. That should count for something. Maya feels her throat tighten as she reads. She thinks about everyone who passed through this house in its dark years. The stenographer working late, the factory workers dragging themselves up the stairs. Clerks, widows, single mothers, people who handed over rent and tried to survive, then moved on and vanished from the record. No one saved their stories. No one mounted plaques for them. The museum tells Mark Twain's story, Susie's story, Olivia's story, even Eleanor's story. But E.M.? She is just initials in a water-scarred notebook hidden under a random floorboard, found only because a board had come loose. "Can we add this to the archives?" Maya asks. Robert nods at once. "Of course. This is the house's history, too." He lets her photograph the pages. Under soft lights, he positions the notebook gently so the spine is not stressed, turning each sheet with gloved fingertips. That night, back in her hotel room, Maya scrolls through the photos on her laptop. She reads E.M. Quote's words again. "We existed here too. That should count for something." Maya opens a new document. At first, she plans to continue the script she outlined before coming to Hartford, but her fingers do not follow that plan. Instead, she starts writing something different. A story where E.M. stands beside Mark Twain, where the stenographers and clerks and widows are part of the mansion's timeline, not just background noise. A story that admits the whole truth, the glory years, the years of grief, and the long, quiet decades when the house was simply a tired building where ordinary people tried to get by. She writes late into the night. Her video will not be just about Mark Twain's mansion as a Gilded Age postcard. It will be about what houses keep inside them: fame and heartbreak, dreams and damage, the celebrated and the forgotten. All of it matters. All of it is real. She thinks about her own life, her student loans, her small apartment, the constant feeling of being one tiny person in a very large, very loud world. Easy to overlook, easy to erase. Maybe that is why this house hits her so hard. Not because it was once grand, but because it fell apart and still survived. Because in the end, someone chose to remember it. Maya posts her video 3 weeks later. She keeps the title simple, The Dark Story of Mark Twain's Mansion. But the story inside is heavier, quieter, deeper than her usual work. It runs about 43 minutes, far longer than most of her uploads. She threads everything into one line of memory: the family's joy in the 1870s, Susie's death, the sudden abandonment, the long years of decay, the cheap apartments carved out of grand rooms, Eleanor's desperate fight, the slow, stubborn restoration, and finally, E.M. Quote's journal, her words read aloud in the empty drawing room. The video ends with Maya sitting on the mansion's front steps at dusk. "This house was built as a dream," she tells the camera. "Then it turned into a nightmare. Then it turned into almost nothing. Just a warren of cheap rooms where forgotten people tried to survive. And now it is a museum. But what does that really mean?" She lets the silence hang for a moment. "I think it means we chose to remember," she says. "Not only the famous writer, not only the wealth and the books and the parties. We chose to remember the grief, the failure, the loss, the years when this house was broken and no one cared. We remember all of it because that is the only honest way to love something." The video begins to spread, not as an overnight explosion, but as a slow, steady climb. 10,000 views grows into 50,000, then into 100,000. The comments catch her off guard. Someone writes, "My grandmother lived in that house in the 1930s. She never told us it was Mark Twain's house. She just said it was cold and sad. Thank you for remembering her." Another viewer says, "My family is going through foreclosure right now. This video made me cry, but also gave me hope. Houses can come back. Families can live through loss." Another comment, "I work in historic preservation. This is the clearest explanation I have seen of why we do this work. It is not mainly about buildings. It is about refusing to let stories disappear." The Mark Twain House and Museum reaches out. They want to feature E.M. Quote's journal in a new exhibit about the mansion's full life. Every era, every layer of use, not only the years when the Clemens family lived there. Maya says yes immediately. She returns to Hartford for the opening. Near the front entrance, the museum has built a small but precise display. E.M. Quote's notebook rests in a climate-controlled case. Beside it are photographs of the mansion during its tenement years and a list of documented residents from the 1920s and 1930s, reconstructed from city records. Over the display, in large type, is a single line from the journal. "We existed here too. That should count for something." School groups pause to read. Tourists lift their phones for pictures. A few older Hartford residents begin sharing their own memories of the building when it was sliced into apartments and offices. One woman, 93 years old, tells Maya, "My father rented an office here in 1941. I visited once as a girl. I remember thinking it was the saddest building I had ever seen. So beautiful, but so broken." She turns to look at the restored drawing room, glowing now under careful lights and polished wood. "I am glad it came back," she whispers. Maya is glad too. She thinks about all the ways houses haunt us. Not with ghosts, but with memory, with the weight of everything they have seen and held. This house has witnessed joy and grief, success and ruin, love and abandonment, fame and near total anonymity. And somehow, against the odds, it survived all of it.